and welcome to COS Indiana Live as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Indiana Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
Welcome to COS Indiana Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman. First thing up, you will meet United States Senator Mike Braun. Due to his schedule, we had to record the interview. It's really great, and it'll be coming up first thing. After that, our COS Indiana State Director, Dale Parrish, will tell you about our excellent educational resources so you can learn more about Convention of States. And then I'll welcome our state leadership team for the I Want to Know segment, and they'll answer some important questions about Convention of States. Now, by the way, if you have a question, you may submit it beginning right now. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, just click the comment button and enter your question. We'll do our best to answer you during I Want to Know. And then finally, I'll invite you to join Convention of States and help us use the Constitution to save the Constitution. So let's go meet Senator Mike Braun. Here to interview him is our legislative liaison, Paul Phillips. Take it away, Paul.
Well, hey, John. I had a great time interviewing Senator Braun. I think it was last Wednesday. And part of what made it so enjoyable is his history with Convention of States Indiana when he was in the Indiana General Assembly. And I hope you'll enjoy his comments about that. And I think I'll be back after the interview to share a couple of thoughts. Phillips, Legislative Liaison for Convention of States Indiana. And it's my pleasure today to talk with Senator Braun, one of our representatives in the U.S. Senate. And Senator Braun is in the thick of things. He sits on the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, the Appropriations and Budget Committees, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, as well as a Special Committee on Aging. So as I said, he's kind of in the thick of it, in the middle of things, and we're going to look forward to getting his perspective. So Senator Braun, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
My pleasure.
I want to jump in actually with something that happened a few years ago, back in 2016, when you were a member of the Indiana General Assembly. And you played a significant role in helping the Convention of States get our application passed in Indiana. And I'm not only talking about voting for the resolution, but our past state director, Diane Gomez, often talks about how you were instrumental in helping her get the resolution passed by coming alongside her, mentoring her and coaching her and teaching her what she needed to know to get that passed. So I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what that process was like and your reasoning for providing so much support to Convention of States.
So the process was about being blessed as a Main Street entrepreneur. So I have had to exercise my own wits, my willingness to compete, running into government in so many different places. We were such a little business for so long. I got that scrappiness of fighting in the trenches. I had 15 employees for 17 years and one location, office in a used mobile home. I mean, it was hard scrabble, but I never gave up that I couldn't build it. But the more I did, and when I started to scale it, Indiana was a blessing to be ensconced in a state that has a good business climate, has balanced budget amendments, has a sane government that doesn't throw regulations and costs on your back. Well, when we started growing from that old trailer into maybe a new location and into surrounding states, and now that little enterprise has grown into one with 70 locations in 40 states. I've had the blessing of seeing what it's like to navigate your way through when government becomes your main impediment rather than an accommodator for enterprise with reasonable guidelines and regulations. So when she came in and was willing to do something that I thought was important, because I don't know if we'll ever get to the finish line as divided as the country is, but we at least need to try. And the founders never intended for DC to be staffed with people that make a career out of it. Number one, we don't send the best folks here. And number two, they get here and vote more on how to extend their career than they do to fix issues. So I helped her to the extent that I knew, being a state legislator, that she had to do to get other legislators on board and to maybe get that to work in a state like Indiana that's grown more conservative over time, that still leans towards liberty and freedom, not security and government running everything in your lives. So I wanted to do it to help her. I was glad to see that it did have some positive impact, and have become even more adamant about it now that I see how dysfunctional this place is, being here 2.5 years and knowing what could be done to make it better.
Fantastic. So we really appreciate your role in getting our resolution passed. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to point out your committee assignments is, as I said, you're in the thick of it, particularly with spending and budget and those kind of things. So from your experience, what are some of the things you think ought to be considered at a convention of states in terms of amendments to the Constitution?
Well, number one, the federal government, since it's got the latitude to print its own money in the basement, so to speak, the Fed's been buying most of the recent debt that we've been putting out there. With no real, I debated Bernie Sanders about 2 months ago on the modern monetary theory. Even liberals like Robert Reich don't want to even defend it much.
Right.
But deficits and cumulative debt don't make any difference anymore. And man, they are political opportunists, and they're like political entrepreneurs, and they're, going for broke currently in front of us. So that is something that through a budget committee that Bernie Sanders is now our chair. If he ever had interest in doing a budget, I don't know when that would have been, because we don't do them anymore. Nothing's done through regular order, bringing in witnesses like we did in Indiana when we did a road funding bill. We interviewed 50 stakeholders, and 48 were willing, if we spent it on roads and bridges, to actually have their taxes go up in the context of a balanced budget.
Right.
None of that's here. So the federal government, biggest business in the world, is run by the seat of its pants, and it needs to probably take a turn into the ditch of some significance before it's shaken into reality that what we're seeing play out since Biden got elected, $2 trillion in a rescue bill, another $4 to $5 trillion, all above and beyond the normal $4.5 trillion we spend each year, and only raise revenues to cover about 3/4 of it.
Right.
Crazy. So there's so much that needs to be done. A balanced budget amendment. The Constitution had one flaw in it. Washington and Jefferson never imagined people would love being a senator or a congressman more than being a farmer or a businessman. That's why they didn't put term limits into place. So term limits arguably might be more important than even a balanced budget amendment. They're both needed if you're going to get the cream of the crop here to serve, and then to live within guardrails that don't loot the country.
Right. All amendments which would be germane to our resolution. So now I'd like to take you back a little bit to your experience in the General Assembly, and then think to your experience in the Senate. I'm curious to know, what are some of the main differences you see between serving in a state legislature and the federal legislature?
I was on Ways and Means, and everything that we spent money on went through committee, and it was done tediously and efficiently. And when we came up with a budget, the top line was always going to be less spending than what we took in. And we believed in rainy day funds and cash reserves. That those two words haven't been in the dictionary here in probably 40 years. And the big difference is we took it through regular order, and now this biggest business in the world, 10 to 12 times the size of Walmart, to get an idea of how big it is, we'll get a huge bill dropped in our lap 2 or 3 days ahead of time that were crafted behind closed doors. I'm an appropriator now. I can't believe they made me one, because they never like my recommendations of living within our means.
Mhm.
But I'll keep saying it. So it's different. You by process and by statute and or amendments had to be responsible fiscally. Here, there's none of that.
Wow. Well, we've got time left for just one more question. And I'd like to know if you have any advice for our grassroots advocates on how they can best interact with their legislators when they're trying to get a favorite project approved, or have input on legislation, or even, would you have any advice for someone thinking of getting started in politics?
So, for somebody wanting to work on the convention of states and get involved with legislators that are going to maybe pick up the gauntlet and run with you on it, she did a good job. And you're going to find some speakers, some Senate pro tems that don't want to touch it because they probably don't want those guardrails and constraints. You're going to have some places like Indiana that will embrace it. I don't think you need term limits at the state level. I think you need term limits at the federal level. And then when it comes to how one might get engaged in politics, if you go to law school, don't get into elective or appointed politics right out of law school. That's the farm system of politicians that we've been sending here to DC for decades. They're not the cream of the crop. They're smart, but they probably never even run a lemonade stand. They don't know how government should work. They're just going to add more to it. So I'd recommend that you get some real world experience. I'm the only senator here that probably never uses staff to put together the questions that I ask in a committee. You know why? Because I lived through it before I got here. And that's how the place is run as well. And again, by lawyers that mostly wanted to be in politics and that don't have any real world experience on the subject matter at hand.
Wow.
In a nutshell, my advice.
Thank you so much, Senator. I know how busy your schedule is. We really appreciate you setting aside some time to talk with us. And just thank you for your continued support of the Convention of States project.
Hey, I had the one senator I admired before I got here was Tom Coburn, who passed away recently. He was an early leader in the Convention of States, and wanting to do something that wrangles in this unruly federal government. And if he'd see here alive and in person what's happened, just since he's passed on, he'd be very disappointed. And we need more individuals like him. He was a doctor, term limited himself. Maybe someday we'll get there.
Pardon me. All right. Well, again, thank you for your time. I know how limited it is, And it really means a lot to us that you were able to speak with us today. Thank you.
You bet. See ya.
All right.
Paul, that was pretty cool. What reflections do you have on the time that you spent with Senator Braun?
Well, first is his candor. He was just very direct, and I think telling it like it is. The thing that struck me the most is when he was comparing his work in the Indiana General Assembly with the U.S. Senate. And it really, I think, points out that in our state legislatures, we actually have legislators. They actually legislate and they do the work. And I'd encourage anybody who hasn't to watch our General Assembly in action, watch the video, and you'll see exactly what he was talking about, how they go through the details and actually legislate. And compare that to the federal government, where rather than legislators, we really just have politicians. And politics is all about gaining and maintaining power.
Yeah.
Legislating is about passing laws. And as he said, the legislation is just dropped in their laps with a day or two notice, and then they're expected to vote on it. So it's definitely a broken process, and we need a convention of states to fix it.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Okay, now remember, if you have any questions at all about Convention of States, you can ask them now by clicking the comment button if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. Now we'll move into our education time. So here's our COS Indiana State Director, Dale Parrish. Dale, welcome to the Roundtable.
Hi, John. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to mention to everyone viewing tonight that we've been having some internet problems. So we may hit a glitch here unbeknownst to us. So just kind of warning, just issuing a general warning here, John, okay, in case we would crash.
Message received.
we crashed just about 3 minutes before we went on the air tonight. So we've had to put everything together real quick tonight. So just to let everyone know. All right. Thank you very much, John. And we'll see you in a bit. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right, folks. I'm as John said, I'm Dale Parrish. I'm the state director for Convention of States here in Indiana. And in this segment, we call this the educational segment. And I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint here. And what I want to do here is we want to, our intention here is to introduce you to the various educational resources that we have available to us here in Indiana. As well as nationally in Convention of States, but we're specifically talking about Indiana here tonight. So these are the different resources that we have available, educational resources. And then we're gonna we try every roundtable. Then we pick one of the resources to focus on and give you a little more in-depth information. And we're going to be focusing on one of those tonight. It's the Indiana. It's not just to Indiana, it's the wiki page, and we'll be getting to that very shortly. And we have with us tonight the author of that page. He's our own Jerry Rowe, so I'll be bringing him on very shortly here. But first of all, I want to go through the different resources that we have here in Indiana. And the first one, of course, is our national website, conventionofstates.com. And this is, you'll hear us make reference to this website frequently. This is where, this is the starting point for anyone that wants to become a supporter in Convention of States. But it also contains a wealth of information, articles, blogs, information that you can learn a great deal about Convention of States and what we're trying to accomplish as a national organization. So our main website, conventionofstates.com. COS University, Convention of States University. This is one of the resources we've already featured in a previous roundtable, but this is a resource that has been developed over the years. Many of us that are in convention of states, that were in convention of states when we first got started, didn't have something like this. We were pretty much on our own to learn what we felt we needed to learn to represent convention of states and tell the story. Well, over the years, we have developed Convention of States University. So once again, this is a resource that we can use not only just for general information, but if you come into Convention of States and you become a supporter and a volunteer, and perhaps volunteer for a leadership role, then we have specific courses here in COS University geared to the particular job that you're trying to fill. So a wonderful, wonderful resource for us. YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel, COS Indiana. Very much an educational resource. We have recordings of various broadcasts that we do. We have recordings. We have some narrated PowerPoint presentations. We have links to other resources. So also, this roundtable broadcast this evening is also being telecast, a live stream, I should, is a proper term, live stream to our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. So once again, another resource that we have available to us here in Indiana. Now, COS Indiana Live. This is a Facebook Live broadcast that we do every Monday evening, and we focus totally on Convention of States here in Indiana. We try to introduce you, the viewer, to new leadership individuals in our group here in Indiana, and we also then devote an entire segment to educating you on what we're trying to accomplish here in Indiana with Convention of States and how we're doing in trying to accomplish the various objectives. And of course, you know, every Monday evening, or excuse me, every fourth Monday of the month, we devote the entire broadcast to a roundtable, and that's what we're doing this evening. So COS Indiana Live, very, very much a resource that we have available to us here in Indiana. Our constitutional coaches, these are Patriot Academy certified constitutional coaches. These are individuals that have gone through training in Patriot Academy, and these are individuals that are qualified to conduct a session with you or a small group that you may have participate in and would like to learn more about our founding documents and about our Constitution. So these are coaches that are available to take you through that process. So this has become very, very much a great resource for us here in COS Convention of States, Indiana. So our constitutional coaches. Well, the last resource before our featured one is to mention the podcast that we have available to us. We have two podcasts available. The Free to Be Free podcast, which is a podcast that is conducted by Paul Phillips, the gentleman from the first segment, our legislative liaison. And then the COS Indiana Live podcast, which is basically the audio portions of our Monday evening broadcast through Facebook Live. So those are two podcasts, and you can reach those through our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. Well, I want to bring up now our featured resource this evening, and this is our wiki page. And in order to discuss this further, I want to bring up this young man. This is Jerry Rowe. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Dale.
Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're coming through loud and clear, loud and clear. Jerry, now, Okay, I'm going to, I hope this works, Jerry. Okay. Again, I like I said, we had some technical issues. So I hope I haven't lost this, but I want to bring up, there we go. I think I got it, Jerry.
You got it.
This is our wiki page. And folks, this is the gentleman that has created this. So I want to start from the beginning with Jerry. And Jerry, tell us, what is a wiki page?
Okay, a wiki is a sort of encyclopedia. Wikipedia is one, and the COS wiki page is another. There's no connection between the two. The COS wiki is completely freestanding and only edited by COS personnel.
Okay, all right. When did you create this?
That would be in about August of 2015. A group of about a dozen convention states people across the country got together and had some online meetings and discussed the likelihood of wiki being a good way to disseminate information. So we spent a month or so at various meetings talking about that. And it ended up I was the one picked out to take care of getting some information in there. So
Okay.
I got that ready, and one of my goals was to replace mailings they did to all the legislatures in the state legislatures in the country. Replace that with the wiki page here in section for that.
Okay. All right. And if I guess the next question is, why did you create this? I think you partly answered that. I remember back at that time we just had very few resources available to us. Am I right? Is that pretty much the why?
There really wasn't much. We had a website. It wasn't really good for what we're doing. We're using the wrong software really, and so the wiki page, it's very good at displaying and finding information, and it's very, very fast in doing so. So
Yeah.
it's an excellent addition to conventionstates.com.
All right. Well, Jerry, let's kind of thumb through this a little bit. Folks, this is the actual wiki page. It's wiki.conventionestates.com. And you might want to tell us a little bit how it's structured here, Jerry.
Okay, so the page you're on is it's a wiki page also, and it has links within it to the various parts of the wiki that are out there, which includes historical documents, which includes documents written by conventionofstates.com. There's some written outside of conventionofstates.com that support it. Those are all in there. You got the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers. There are hundreds of pages of documentation here.
This is, I tell you, this is, do you spend a lot of time on this, Jerry, keeping it updated?
It varies. I mean, I do more in the wintertime than the summer. Of course, I'm busy with other things in the summer outside and whatnot, but sometimes it's pretty intense and I'd spend all night on it for nights in a row and stuff after I do my daily things and get a particular hard document or a bunch of them all converted and onto the wiki.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things we wanted to show people was this help button, right?
Right.
So if I push this help button, let's hope it works. There you go. Okay.
So there's some tips there at the top, and you can explore those. There's the text tips. Down at the bottom is an icon for the videos I made. There are 2 videos, and first one shows how to use the wiki for yourself, and the second one shows how you can use the wiki to provide social media documentation and information to those who have questions.
Okay. All right. Great.
So I would definitely check out those 2 videos.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, folks. Well, Jerry, thank you very much, my man, for coming on and talking to us about the wiki. Let me get back here. Once again, folks, a resource available to us here, not only in Indiana, but this is available nationally. But but it's a resource that we created here by our own Jerry Rowe. Jerry is a systems information analyst. He's part of the leadership team here in Indiana. And Jerry, you've been with Convention of States from almost its beginning, haven't you?
Yeah, I started getting into it in 2014, and by 2015, I was on board as a volunteer. And then 2016, which is what I was getting the wiki ready for, to pass in the state, and we did pass on February 29th, of all things.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, Jerry, once again, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for the information on the wiki. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, that covers us for this segment. And I'm going to bring John back up here. And John, I think that takes care of our segment on our second segment on education.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Dale, and also Jerry for explaining that wiki page a little bit for us. It looks like a tremendous resource.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Now we're going to move into I Want to Know. And as we do that, if you have any questions about Convention of States, you can ask them now by clicking the comment button if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. Now we're going to bring our entire state leadership team on the screen. There are 5 men who serve as leaders for us here in COS, Indiana. Dale, who just disappeared, there he's back. He's our state chairman. And we've got 4 others who are going to be popping up here now. There's Paul Phillips. Welcome back, Paul. You were here just a few minutes ago.
Yep.
And Gary Harbaugh. Welcome back to the Roundtable, Gary. Been a month since we've seen you. And George Ward, our state grassroots coordinator. And there's Ken Kashuba, our comms guy, communications. Don't get confused when I say comms. Okay. Well, Dale, let me start with you. You're at the control board there. Do we have any viewer questions to post at the very beginning here?
You know, we do, John, and let me kind of look through here and see. Now, some of these questions that we've received this evening do pertain to the Senator Braun interview. So, of course, obviously, Senator Braun was a recorded interview, but just to kind of maybe Paul or somebody might be able to answer some of these questions. But here's one that I think is kind of an interesting, and I don't know the answer to this, and this comes from Susan Lyon. How many U.S. senators support a convention of states? Does anyone know?
I can take a shot at that, Dale. In terms of current senators, obviously Senator Braun is a supporter. We also have as formal endorsers Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. We also have some former senators who've endorsed Rick Santorum, former senator from Pennsylvania, Jim Talent, former senator from Missouri. So those are a few just off the top of my head.
Of course, Tom Coburn endorsed us too.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And since the Convention of States is driven by the states, we the people, it doesn't really matter if U.S. senators are supported or oppose it. It's going to happen when we the people demand it.
Right. That's
what else you got for us, Dale?
Well, we got just a comment here from Patrick with regard to Senator Braun doing a great job. So might as well get that in there.
Thanks, Patrick. James Patrick, yeah.
Okay, Michael Paisley comment, term limits for all in Congress and senator term limits.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone want to comment maybe a little further on this? the term limits thing is one of the pillars of our resolution. Does anyone want to comment a little further on what that entails? Anybody want to take a crack at that?
I'll take a crack at that, Dale. I think one of the things that historically, when they wrote the Constitution, they didn't necessarily have the idea of term limits, but they had the idea of rotation in office, that people might come into office, serve, and then leave, maybe come back in a different role. They certainly did not have the idea that somebody would go to the House of Representatives and serve for 30, 40, 50 years, as has happened. So the idea that term limits might be necessary just, I don't think, really seemed apparent to them, because they lived in a different era when people looked at public service in a different way. It wasn't the road to riches, it was a road to service.
Very good, Gary. Very good. Well, we got another one here. One more. I think this is a good kind of a statement here from one of our region captains, Richard Loken. Senator Coburn would have challenged Fauci of the CDC. Do you think that's true?
I think so. He challenged a lot of things. And as a physician, he was in a pretty good position to challenge Dr. Fauci.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we've got some other questions here. Let's. I want to kind of get people rearranged here, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Should have had this arranged to begin with, but here's another one that we've got. Let me get to it here. This has to do back with on Convention of States per se. Let's see if I can get it up here. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Who started this whole thing? I'm going to call upon George, our state grassroots coordinator. George, tell us who in the world got this movement started.
Who started the Convention of States project? Well, it actually started coming to fruition with the efforts of citizen activist extraordinaire Mark Meckler. People that were heavy in the Tea Party are probably familiar with that name. And also Michael Ferris, who is a constitutional researcher and has argued cases in front of the Supreme Court, constitutional historian, things of this sort. They decided to start organizing the Convention of States project, and they placed it under the umbrella of Citizens for Self-Governance. Now, citizen self-governance is like an umbrella organization of which the Convention of States project falls under. So the Convention of States project is kind of like the muscle of the mission that Citizens for Self-Governance has. Their mission is to self-governance must be restored across America. Citizens for Self-Governance will evaluate awareness and provide resources, advocacy, and education to grassroots organizations and individuals exercising their right to self-govern themselves. And as I said, Citizen for Self-Governance sees the Convention of States project as a means to accomplish this mission. The actual, is it possible? Can we really do this kind of thing? Was well researched by many constitutional attorneys and researchers, academic people, and nobody found any reason why we shouldn't go ahead and proceed. So here we are today.
It's 15th. Right there in Article 5, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Well, thanks, George.
It seems to me like George was reading the answer to that question.
Do you think
he prepared for this and this question in some way? I don't know.
I think he's been preparing his whole life.
I read their mission. I was looking at this earlier today, and I had it written down, and I didn't want to misquote it. So I wrote it down.
That's great. And George, it really puts this thing, Convention of States project, into its proper context. We see where it's coming from. It's all about self-governance. We don't like tyranny in this country. We don't like it at all. Dale, what's our next question?
Yeah, we got another question here.
Well, what happens if a bad amendment comes out of the convention? Paul Phillips, you look like a good one to try to answer that question.
Sure. So an amendment coming out of the convention, or one coming from Congress for that matter, is simply a suggestion. And it would have to be ratified before being added to the Constitution. So my answer is, what happens if we get a bad amendment from a convention? Same thing as if we get a bad amendment from Congress. Now, in our history, we've had 27 amendments to the Constitution, and we've had an additional 6 amendments that were proposed by Congress that were never ratified. And probably the worst of those was in 1861, an amendment that would have prohibited the federal government from abolishing slavery. And that got nowhere in terms of ratification. So that's what would probably happen with a bad amendment. But, excuse me, it's possible a bad amendment could get ratified. And we do have an example of that. The 18th Amendment, which was prohibition on alcohol. After that was enacted, it became pretty obvious that that was a mistake. So what happened is we passed the 21st Amendment and repealed it. Mm-hmm. So bad amendment, most likely in the first place, it won't get ratified. If it does get ratified and after ratification we learn it's a bad amendment, it can always be repealed.
Okay, thanks, Paul. That again tells me how safe this process is. We're not going to ruin the nation by doing this. No way. Okay, Dale, what's our next?
Yeah, we got another question here, a viewer question. I think is a good question. I don't know, maybe someone would want to take this on. This is from another one of our region captains, mm-hmm. Dale Tipton.
How does the Mark Levin book, The Liberty Amendments, relate to COS? Who wants to take a stab at that one? Thanks, Dale Tipton, for that question.
I'll take a stab if nobody else does. Great irony that just as Mark Levin's book was being published, Mark Meckler and Michael Ferris were about to launch the Convention of States project. They really are in many ways closely related. I guess it was a matter of divine providence that they came out at the same time. The Liberty Amendments was Mark Levin's look at amendments that he thought would help preserve liberty in America. And at the same time this book was coming out, Michael Ferris and Mark Meckler were starting a movement to literally do that exact thing, which is preserve liberty through using Article 5 of the Constitution. So happenstance that they came out together, but were actually no direct connection between them.
Okay, thanks, Gary, for putting that perspective in there. I didn't know all of that stuff. You taught me some things I didn't know. That's cool. Okay, back to Dale. What's our next question going to be?
All right. Just a comment on the Liberty Amendments. That book was kind of a which started many of us in Convention of States. I mean, it was one of the first things that inspired me. Let me get on the screen here. That inspired me a great deal to get involved in Convention of States, and I've heard, as others have told their story about how they got involved in Convention of States, that Mark Levin and his book Liberty Amendments was one of the first things that got them started in the Convention of States. So, yep, very, very, very important publication to many of us. All right, John, let me see what else we got here. I think we got, I saw a couple other questions. Here's a good one.
Oh my, what happens if Congress refuses to call the convention? This is after, the required 34 states pass the application. What happens if Congress refuses to call it? I'm going to go back to Gary and ask him if he has an answer to that question.
John, it's a very relevant question in the sense that we look at Congress today and say, well, they're largely a waste of time. What if they don't do what they're supposed to do? Actually, according to Professor Rob Nadelson, the foremost expert on Article 5, he points out that the language in Article 5 is mandatory. It says Congress shall call a convention of the states for the purpose of proposing amendments. So Congress really doesn't have a choice. And if they failed to do their duty, their constitutional duty, we could go to court, and court would issue what's called a writ of mandamus, ordering the Congress to do what they are already ordered to do by the Constitution.
Okay, so there is a path to remedy if Congress fails to live up to
Yes.
its responsibility. Okay. Got
Okay,
another question?
Yeah, we got another one here. This is a good one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this nullification thing. So I'm going to throw that one to Ken Kashuba. Ken, is nullification under the 10th Amendment the answer?
Well, John, that's an interesting question, because really it's got two answers. Because there's two different types of nullification, which gives us two answers, a yes and a no. So let me give you a couple examples, and maybe that'll help clarify the question. Basically, is it the answer? On the yes side, I'll give you an example that let's say the federal government is dangling out some federal money to a state for their education system, and the state doesn't want any part of it. Well, they can nullify that and say, no, we don't want your money, because of the attached rules or regulations that come with it. Of course, any federal money comes with attached rules and regulations. So here in the state of Indiana, if we decided that we didn't want any part of what the federal government was doing, even though they were dangling to pay us for it or give us lots of money for it, we could nullify that and say no. So that basically is that answer. On the no side, it goes back to what Senator Braun was talking about. National debt. We simply can't nullify the national debt. It's something that can't be nullified. So, in the big picture of everything, there's some parts of nullification that will work on a state basis, but for the most part, what we're talking about major wise in the sense of national debt and term limits, those type of things, those we can't really just nullify. We have to go through the procedure which we're following here, Convention of States, to best address that. Okay,
Thanks, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that insight. I think we might have time for one more question. Do we have one, Dale?
We just happen to have one more question here, I think. You want me to take this one, John?
Well, you're the only one I haven't picked on yet. So what is this so-called runaway convention that I've heard of?
Well, the runaway convention, the topic or the concept of runaway convention is used very frequently by our opposition, and we do have a lot of opposition, people that don't want to see a convention of states happen. And the primary reason for that is the fear of a runaway convention. And of course, there are those in our opposition that do believe that the original constitutional convention by our founders was in fact a runaway convention. And I think we've proven through history that that's not true. But the runaway convention, like I said, that is a fear that the convention is going to be controlled by those individuals that don't want to see this happen, that certain terrible things are going to happen, like the Second Amendment is going to be done away with, or other parts, or the whole Constitution will be done away with and rewritten, and so there's just a great deal of fear out there. But there are a lot of safeguards already in place, safeguards that have been identified that would be in place to ensure that a convention of states would in fact be a safe occurrence. And there will be rules in place. There will be ways that commissioners or delegates are selected. there will be, of course, the ultimate, just for the sake of time here, the ultimate safeguard on a convention of states is that once again, you got to remember the convention of states is for the purpose of proposing amendments, and any proposed amendment then would have to go through the ratification process, just as if the amendment had come out of Congress, and that would require 3/4 of the state legislatures, or 38 states, to ratify any proposed amendment coming out of a convention of states. So that would be the ultimate safeguard to ensure that that we would not have a runaway convention. So it's a fear tactic, but I think we've got it covered.
Yeah, I think so. And, it's pretty awesome. 38 out of 50 states would have to ratify a proposed amendment. That means that only 13 states would have to vote no or fail to ratify in order to kill a bad amendment. Isn't that cool?
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you 5 men for coming on and helping us in this I Want to Know segment. So now we're going to move toward the invitation for you to volunteer to help us out. And before we do that, here's an important video that's going to tell you in 2 minutes what you need to know about Convention of States.
Article 5 of the United States Constitution gives we the people the power to put the federal government back in its constitutional box and expand liberty for all. Once 2/3 of the states pass similar applications, a convention of states will be called, and there is nothing the federal government can do to stop it. This isn't a red movement or a blue movement. It's an American movement based on one fundamental question: who decides? Who should decide the issues that affect your community? Washington, D.C., or you? The Convention of States Action Resolution applies for an Article 5 convention that would propose constitutional reforms limited to 3 topics. First, fiscal restraints on the federal government. With over $140 trillion in unfunded liabilities, we need a balanced budget. But our resolution also allows for caps on federal spending and taxation. The second topic is limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. The Supreme Court has authorized the feds to have control over almost every aspect of our lives. The COS Action Resolution empowers us to restore the Constitution to its original intent and return power to the states and the people. Finally, term limits. Thanks to a corrupt ruling class in Washington, trust in the federal government is at an all-time low. That's why our resolution gives Convention of States commissioners the power to send the career politicians packing, including the judiciary and other federal officials. So what can you do? First of all, sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Call, email, or request a meeting with your state legislators to ask them to co-sponsor the COS resolution in their state. Get plugged in with your local Convention of States team so you can stay engaged, educate others, and respond to national calls to action. Our success depends on you, so we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.
Yeah, who doesn't want to limit the power of the federal government? And I think the key question in that whole video is who decides? Do you want to decide issues in your life, or do you want some unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. to decide key issues in your life? Who decides? So please join Convention of States right now by visiting our website, conventionofstates.com. That's conventionofstates.com. There, when you land on that page, you will see our petition. And we ask you to sign it. You fill in your name and address and contact information, and then you'll be part of us. And so if you really want to make a difference, up at the top menu bar of your screen, click where it says Take Action. See it there? And when you do that, you'll come to this screen, and then you can click Become a Leader. At that point, you can apply for a leadership position. We need lots of help to get this thing done. So now is the time to visit conventionofstates.com, sign the petition, and then take action and help us make history. That brings us to the end of this month's roundtable. So mark your calendar. You don't want to miss our next roundtable on the 4th Monday of October. That will be October 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm John Ackerman for COS Indiana Roundtable.